Hi Chris, if you can just give us an update following on from the court case and let us know what's
I want to
occurring.
provide a proper update because a great deal has happened over the last few weeks. The issues surrounding Audrey's bankruptcy, the conduct of the trustees, Norfolk District Council, and the lack of transparency from various public authorities have continued to develop rather than slowing down. The evidence continues to grow. Over the recent weeks, I've continued pressing for full disclosure from the trustees and their solicitors. I've repeatedly asked for complete files, accountancy records, decision-making documents, correspondence, evidence that should have been disclosed from the outset. My position remains straightforward. If public officials and insolvency practitioners have acted properly, then they should have no difficulty in providing this evidence. But over the course of weeks, I've just been either sidestepped or pushed to one side to the other, and nobody giving still any direct answers or anything apart from the enforcement. I've reached out to Hannah and we've worked together at putting in a counterclaim to the High Courts. What hopefully by Monday of this coming week will be properly secured in the High Court, so I can then get a date going forward. That hopefully will stall the coming evictions. We're still under immense pressure. We're having sleepless nights. I'm getting continuous amounts of mail from the trustees, but nothing of what you actually want. That's the thing, all enforcement letters, but nothing actually giving you the information you want or to know whether their conduct has been correct. I've also continued pursuing the complaints regulators, the official receiver. Complaints has no progress through the complaints processes, but many of the substances issues I originally raised still require proper investigation rather than administrative responses, what I keep getting. Alongside this, I've been preparing further correspondence concerning Wilkins and Chapman, requests for complete disclosure from them, because as a trustee company, they're required by law, but they don't want to, because if they give any information and it shows that they haven't done the correct investigations, and it will show that they've acted illegally to me, but their actions from the beginning and outset have been illegal. But they're all just out to grab land and take people's assets without giving them the due process that they're due. Norfolk District Council also remains a significant concern. As a local authority, they informed me last week that I wrote to them 63 times in 1 month. So I wrote back and asked them, how many times out of that 63 did they actually reply or answer a question? And this isn't just about one answer. This is about covering many issues, local government reorganisation and the wider community, not just my own issues. But they haven't answered me, and they haven't answered many other residents of the same village or the same county. Further complaints and evidence have been compiled involving the council, complaint handling, disclosure failures and conduct of senior officers. I did have a meeting earlier on in the week with the leader of Norfolk County Council, and I will say, out of all the people that I've met from councils over many, many years, he actually impressed me the most. There is actually a bit of common sense there for once.
Wow.
What rarely did leave a remark for me, and when then the next day I see the leader of Norfolk County Council, the corporate side had resigned, that actually sent a little bit of a warning across the bows that the time has come that the council is actually being looked into, and their conduct might stretch to the wider communities. As we all know, they've acted to many households over the years as enforcers before even asking the questions or trying to put the benefit of the people involved. What else have we got? Also been a development concerning the Department for Work and Pensions regarding my mother's pension credits, given her age and vulnerability, financial circumstances. I believe the delays and uncertainty have caused unnecessary stress from them. They sent her a 64-page form the other day to fill in, asking her how much money she would be having left after the insolvency practitioners have took her money out of the house.
Well, how does she know that?
And that's what we had to literally put. How would she know? And because the properties aren't hers, they're trust property. The asset is trust asset, what goes back generations. We're not talking about one person. And this was the con that I would warn anybody about land registry. Make sure that you get the land registry document in the name of a trust to stop this theft of land, because it's only by the saviour of God that my name appears on parts of the land registry, and it's causing problems. But if it had been a straightforward, just in Audrey's name, they could have claimed that instantly. But it's only because of it having a class A on it and it being under different things, and I can prove that I've got an interest in the land, that it has given me a bit of a safety net.
So was there an actual hearing on that Friday?
So we had a hearing on the Friday where the judge ruled in favour that they can now take it to the High Court for a High Court eviction to enforce their possession orders that they've got. But while the trustees won't talk to me, I have then put in this High Court hearing myself to try and put in a counterclaim what is in the Court of Chancery, and that one operates under, again, another, it would take me a whole video to really explain it to anybody, but if you do the investigations, there's different courts in this country do different things, i.e. hence why the poor post office people got into so many issues, because that wasn't, again, another lawful court, it was a man-made court. So we now are going to hopefully cut off the trustees by putting it into the Chancery Court. And also the trustees are entering all the courtrooms with unclean hands because they have not investigated. Because to investigate would basically leave them with a problem. Because now, at this late in the stage, they could never have clean hands again in the courtroom because they can't prove that they've ever done any of this investigation. And I keep asking them and they haven't disclosed it. The outcome of the court case now is the eviction, what was planned for the 9th of July, has now been shelved until we get a High Court hearing. I don't really understand that to the extent I haven't had the full court order delivered yet, but the courts are running at considerable delays, as they keep like to tell you on the emails, but they seem to manage to get hearings in really quick for possession orders. Also, I was referred to as a free man of the land by a county court bailiff, but not just on off the cuff referral. It was documented, it was issued to the courts, it was put into very many court papers, so it added as a derogative characteristic of my being, rather than being somebody who just knows our rights and our liberties. It was definitely put in there to discredit my case for that court hearing, what went against me, where then the judge decided that it would be quite apparent to award Wilkinson and Chapman another £3,000 worth of costs. What I will tell anybody, they're not going to get them. They can do what they like, they're not going to get them. And I'll fight until the end. As an Englishman sums his castle, and theft is theft, and that's what this is. Profiteering and racketeering, the oldest words in the book. They don't like mentioning them in court, but that's the truth.
So Chris, can you just explain how long this legal case has all been going on, and how long you and your mum have been under threat of eviction, and how it's affecting you both now?
Well, the initial outline of the case you really could take back to around 2022, the COVID period of when everything got muddled. Then mum being ill and the council not wanting to operate or talk to her. From then it then progressed further on to the first initial bankruptcy, and ever since then it's the pursuing of the eviction and the 3-day court hearing, and now into the final possession order hearings where they don't want to cover anything what hasn't been covered in the last court case. And then Linda asks, how's it making you feel? Well, you have to put your life on hold. I felt like for the last 4 years, every penny I've earned has had to go on to legal fees. I've neglected all the things that I should have been doing, like my garden and my life, and even just a general upkeep of the house that I've lived in all of my life. It's just a complete mess, and nobody wants to answer you any questions, and that's the frustration bit. And then to be basically antagonised that you can't get no answers from anybody, and then it doesn't matter what you ask, and then every time that you need to go to the legal side of things, because it comes with huge costs, and that's one thing that they know is planned to exhaust you, is to give everything a huge amount of cost and amount of fees that you just can never dig yourself out of the hole. Considering that I was originally never made bankrupt, never took on any hearings, then for the trustees to add me on and for me defending myself, then whack me with a £60,000 injunction cost against me, for me now to still try and defend myself, where I'm just literally fighting them day by day and giving them more headaches than they can come, for somebody who was never named on the original papers to now find themselves named on everything, but then having bills sent to them and claims to them for as if they've got no standing in the place in the first place after most of your life. This is where there's something very wrong, and there's some very corruption in some very different offices, and it spreads across all different organisations: North Norfolk District Council, Wilkinson and Chapman, and Norwich County Courts and the judges. It's all designed and planned as a land grab, similar to the Enclosure Acts of the 1700s. And the frustration of the life being on hold without any way of getting out of it, without just by holding your nerve. That's the main thing. That is the main thing, is to hold your nerve. But the stressfulness of 5 years of hounding, that's all you can call it, is hounding. It's demanding money when menses. That is what it is.
And how's your mum coping with it? I mean, after I know she was
79,
geared up for the last hearing. Now she's 79. Another birthday.
Yeah,
so.
last week.
Yeah.
It's having what should have been her twilight years and enjoyment of her benefits that she'd reaped for her life. They've destroyed them. They've stripped her of every bit of assets she had. They stopped her even getting a pension for 8 weeks. A woman in her 70s then, when they bankrupted her, because they closed all of her bank accounts down.
Yeah. You said.
And that has, I mean, bankruptcy is a draconian measure. And it should be reserved for the highest cases and should be reserved for the most serious instances. And I don't think a 76-year-old £7,000 unowed council tax bill warrants anybody being made bankrupt for.
No.
That's the thing.
79-year-old.
Now she's 79. I'm talking about
when it started.
When it started, the actual bankruptcy. And bearing in mind, she'd then been in hospital for, she had that 7.5 hour operation. Yeah. And then she was 12 months basically complete recovery, because they cut off from hair to hair. You know, that is where the whole logic comes. But of course, it boils down to councils, district councils. The district councils are the enforcers. The county councils are the ones who spend the money, and the district councils only get their money by building enforcement. All of their money is raised on the back of enforcement. Then they have in-house solicitors departments, and their in-house solicitors departments again are designed wholly and solely to fee build, to pay for the officers. And the social care ombudsman and the ICO are running at 40-week backlog, but it isn't actually 40 weeks, it's 62 weeks
Is it?
backlog. Yeah, they told me that. And they then are sending you out a response, and this becomes an interesting one from the ICO, because the ICO, after you get to 40 weeks, sends you a response saying, we have looked into it and we're not going to take it any further, but if you wish you can appeal it. So it's then you then take it through the appeal. So rarely they've then got 80 weeks. Well, what good's that when you're dealing with a case that is moving at great speed? You can't.
So your mum really isn't coping very well at all with this?
No. Well, none of us are coping very well at all. And then it had the detrimental effect on the chip shop, because Mike and Tara, who had been tenants in there for getting on for 9 years, asked the trustees for their freedom of information and North Norfolk. Never even got a letter of confirmation back, but just got basically a demanding letter that you will start paying us your rent, and that's. So they said, we're not dealing with this, Chris, and then they up and left. So the threats and menaces again of the trustees have meant that 2 more people have lost their livelihoods, and a building stands empty, and a rural community hasn't got another business.
Yeah. So how do they classify themselves as public servants, do you think? What public are they serving?
The public servant was lost many years ago. The public servant is all by pay, but what you need to remind them is if you are an officer is an office of an office, and they actually take an oath of office, and the oath of office ties you back to the coronation oath of 1752, I think it is. Not the first coronation oath, the second coronation oath of William and May. So you have to remind these people, because all of these people what are in these offices have either to become an officer, although you might think you've got a lovely job and you are earning £45,000 to £55,000 per year as a low grade officer
with sickness pay,
but you don't get the sickness pay until you've had at least 3 months of stress of taking your new position. Right? So, but when you then go home and tell your mum that you've become an officer in an office and you've got a lovely job and you are the planning officer or the enforcement officer or let's have the other one, the 151 officer in charge of the finances and your council tax, and he's on £92,000 a year at North Norfolk, and they've gone through 4 of them in the last 3 years because of stress related incidences, and North Norfolk is running at 2,000 office hours a year sickness at the minute, long-term sickness. Yeah, what is running it one of the highest in the country. But once you take that office job and you sign that piece of paper, what is your job contract? The piece what they don't actually tell you, and the piece that needs reminding to these people is and the police constable knows this fact, is because when a police constable is not the officer of policy, he is a constable, that ties him with his oath of office, what is the oath to the people. But the council has that exact same oath through the office system.
That's what I thought.
But they forget it. And when they sign their contract will say an affirmation. And they don't realise in modern day law that means exactly the same as the ancient Danish rite of the oath of office. And the oath of office was brought in by the Christians against the Vikings to make them have an oath that they would not invade them more than once a year. And if they didn't, they were going to rot in hell. And that way, a lot of Vikings ended up converting to Christianity, what is a bit of the peculiarity of how we got this oath of office. But we need to reteach these people that they need to do all the checks and balances before they can undertake these acts that they are taking, because they are, at the end of the day, only acts and statutes what are for the governed, but not to be abused. And that's the trouble. The last 15 years, well, since Tony Blair mucked around with the councils
Mm.
and made them funded rather than underfunded. That's where the problem set in, because you've got a corporate council.
Mm.
What is a limited company with Bragton Bond Street number,
Yeah.
and then on the other side of it, you've got the Mr. Nice Side Council, who's supposed to be doing everybody's home improvements and that, and supposed to be paying benefits and making sure everything's done, because that side's got no money, and the other side's making only their money from the enforcement of the people on the other side who've got no money.
Absolutely.
And you're now getting a war between the internal workings of councils.
Mm. Well, it is helped, I suppose, because they don't communicate one department to the next.
By design.
Exactly.
By design. And
Exactly.
also, they can't. Because,
Yeah.
again,
I know,
can't.
we've got privacy, which prevents them, and it's a really good excuse as to why we have to then verify who we are every different department we get to. We have to prove who we are and go back through the whole story.
And repeat it.
And repeat and repeat and get
then-
all the evidence we've already used through the
Yeah.
last department and give it to the next department.
Then you get Norfolk District Council,
Mm.
what hasn't had an official set of auditors carried out in 5 years.
Isn't that against the law?
It's against law, and I think you will find there's probably a handful of councils in East Anglia what have actually complied, and there is another handful what haven't.
Mm.
But what sanctions is there for the ones what haven't compared to the ones what have?
Probably none.
There isn't.
None.
So it doesn't give you the incentive to be a good council.
No.
Yet you get the parish councils and that locally. We've just done our end of year audit. What spot on, but yes, we're only a little council, and we don't have to have nowhere near an in-depth audit of what a big council does. But if we have to have one, and we have to spend all them hours for a clerk now, what we didn't 30 years ago because it was all done voluntary, all that money now isn't being spent. So where you get back, we get, what do we get here now? 18,000 a year precept. Out of that 18,000 a year precept, 12,000 on clerk wages.
Really?
Where, go back 20 years where we used to get 13,000 precept, our biggest outlay was an audit once a year, the insurance, and a new pen and rubber.
Well, how's the clock so much?
Because they're £16 an hour, and you've got their PAYE on top of that, and you've got to give them holiday pay.
But they only... How many meetings do you have a month?
One meeting
That's
a
what
month.
I thought.
Yeah, but we have to do all of the NELC, all of the finances, all of the footpaths, all of the grass cutting. We're getting it down. We've got here at Great Rival, we've got one of the best clerks probably in the country, because he's, yes, he charges us, but he's also conscientious and knows what he's doing to the benefit of the people rather than to the system. And the trouble is
well, you're a rarity then.
yeah, all the monitoring officers across the country are trained by companies like Wilkinson and Chapman. Then you get down to all the clerks. All the clerks become yes men because they're all part of NALC.
Although it is their job to advise the parish council too.
It is.
They have to do quite a lot of training.
But they only have to advise the parish council on government policy, not on how it affects people's rights and whether it's lawful, because there's a big difference between being
they
legal
won't get
and
taught
lawful.
on that, will they?
And your parish council is your first common law tier of government.
Absolutely.
Where it needs to operate is where the person meets the council.
And where the parish council should represent the parishioners.
Yeah.
And
But
take that up to the county.
But when the county or the district is not having any, they're just basically using parish councils to keep the grass cut and the dog shit bins emptied around the villages, there is now a problem because there's no accountability. When you had your tiered systems of council upward, you had 365 days a year of accountability. You had all your parish councils looking at your councillors to see that your councillors, now your councillors are going into meetings and they're voting on stuff, but when you then come back to the parish council meeting, have they actually asked the parish council? No, they're following party line.
It all comes top down.
Yeah.
And the actual human rights, like yours and Audrey's,
you take the local...
are just swept under the rug.
You take the local government reorganisation. Our district councillor here is Mike Hankins. Mike Hankins did not come to any meeting and say, how would you like us to vote in the local general government reorganisation? And at that point, we would have voted round our table and we would have probably said we would like to see one tier system over the whole of Norfolk, and this 3-tier system is just going to be split. Nobody's going to know where you are, and our closest district to here is going to be Great Yarmouth.
Indeed.
You know, what is 45 minutes drive each way from here to a council office. But when he voted in the local meeting, he voted with the Liberal Party, because the Liberal Party wanted the 3-tier system. So then one of the constituencies decided to put in a freedom of information request to how many people actually applied to the local consultation. Don't quote me exactly, but what it was it was 45% of the people wanted a 2-tier system. 40% wanted the 1-tier system, and the remainder wanted the 3-tier system. What system did we get? The 3-tier system. What the lowest amount of people actually wanted. It's all, like you say, it's top down. Totally. But we need to remind these people that they're in a place of authority as long as they do all the checks and balances and act lawfully. But we've lost that, and now it's a job to them, and they can get as much as they can get as a pay, as if they're working for a company. But when you work for a council and you sign that contract, you're not just signing to work at Tesco's. No. You're signing to that's why you get that amount of recriminations.
You're supposed to be representing thousands of people in your constituency.
Well, you take the leader of Norfolk County Council, the one who just resigned last Friday. £206,000 a year was his wages. Right?
Nothing to be sniffed at.
He has had that position for, I think, 13 or 14 years, so he got quite comfortable in it.
Yeah, complacent maybe.
Although you won't find any records of him holding that position for that long, it is because it was actually a new position only made 5 years previous. But previous to that, it was called something else, but he also held that position.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
What was also held in joint with Tom Fitzpatrick, who was leader of Norfolk District Council when it started to go into its turmoil of the first downward spiral. But of course he's now no longer at Norfolk County Council. We're now got the new administration in there, what does seem better. Or we will keep our fingers crossed that they seem a bit more open to looking into things, and if they can get a one-up on the outgoing administration, they seem to be quite happy to do so. Okay. Although they are arguing over the cost of a tent at the minute, the Royal Norfolk Showground, who signed off £75,000.
For a tent?
Yeah. And then on other news, we've got the demonstration going on up at Thetford.
That's why they want your 3 properties, to pay for a tent.
Yeah, for a
there
tent.
You go.
And then, of course, we've got to fund the extra police we need for the demonstration up at Thetford, where for the last 3 days we've been arguing over health and safety for the residents of Norfolk who have gone to attend a demonstration. Yeah. But they were more concerned about a caravan that was obstructing a clearway on a voo with a good old patriot in it, Zach. He's a character.
Yeah.
But it's a rebellion, and it's time everybody takes to the flag, and it's the only way. It's the only way. The
Peasants' Revolt did bring around changes previously.
The Peasants' Revolt, this time round, it hasn't got to be a Peasants' Revolt. This time round, it's got to be the sensible revolt. It's the people of all. It's not just against the peasants. It's against the middle class.
They didn't realise it because they followed the rules, and they were really good people, but they didn't realise it was another cul-de-sac at the end of the day.
Then of course you can then go back to my dad's generation. You can go back to what happened in Italy, 1939, then what happened in 1952. I'm only following orders. The Nuremberg trials. You know, we can follow orders, and all these people and these officers can say we're following orders. While they've all got huge insurance policies protecting them, no accountability will ever come down to them. And that's the trouble.
Indeed.
So
Yeah.
it needs people to fund small court cases, i.e. to extract things like freedom of information. So when councils won't get freedom of information, a small court case for about £1,000 will get that information extracted. That holds that council to account. Somebody's got an issue with the council and that council's working. Don't take the council to court, take the individual to court. Put that individual, you're the one who's in charge of giving me that note, that information.
Yeah, you can spend years if there's a huge array of people, though, if you've got to do it one by one by one.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they soon drop out of the way.
Mm.
If you knock them off.
If they acknowledge.
I'm practically certain that I've had a couple of solicitors at Wilkinson and Chapman who now have all of a sudden, that's why my letters are going higher up, who've basically said he's wanting our solicitors' numbers and reporting us to the regulator because we haven't investigated the case. Because you're the solicitors to the trustees can tell you as much as you like. Ignore what Mr. Buxton's saying. But if you know what Mr. Buxton's saying is right, you are the solicitor who is covered by your solicitor regulator.